Hello, and welcome back to the Last Place Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your co host, Ethan, joined today by Ryan, and it's going to be just the two of us here for a little bit. Josh has got some business, some life, some personal stuff. So it's going to be me and Ryan talking
Yeah,
fantasy football. So, Ryan, what's going on?
yeah, we'll miss him, but Josh is gonna be taking a little bit of a break. He'll be back eventually. We don't know when, but he will be back, and he is always going to be a part of this team. Um, so we are on to week 11, y'all.
Yep.
We are only a couple weeks away from the fantasy playoffs, and
Yeah, about
it's
4
it,
weeks.
it's almost it's heartbreaking. Honestly, it feels like this year has gone by so quick. I
It really
hate it. I hate it. It just feels
I've
like
got some big games coming up fantasy
I
wise.
know. Yeah, and
I
there's
have
big
to win
games
all of
all
them.
around.
Like I've got Jacob Duran, and all mine's divisional. Like I have to
Yeah.
beat Duran, I have to beat uh Alex, I have to beat Tyler, and I have to beat Caldwell.
Yeah.
So
And
I can only lose
see, I
one of
think
those.
this might be the first year that I don't make the playoffs. I don't know if I will.
It's up in the air. With
I
you winning this last week, you have a good
yeah.
shot because Michaela lost and Ashley's
Mhm.
still behind, and your dad is still behind. So you
Yeah.
just have to keep
And
winning and hope
yeah,
that Ashley
I
or
just
Michaela keeps losing.
that's the big question mark. And man, I this might be the first year that I don't make it. I'm hoping I do, but it might not be my year. So,
We'll see. I
um,
think I've got the horses to do it. I've got to just not have what happened this last weekend happen, which is honestly, this one's kind of a wash for me because a kicker and a defense combined for like 30 something points. Like her defense scored
yeah,
16
they
and her
kind of
kicker
killed you.
scored 21. Like that's just, and I lose by 3.2 tenths of a point or
There's not
0.32
much you
tenths
can
of
do
a point.
about that.
Yeah, it was just one of those things. Like her defense went
Yeah,
off. If I had started the Bengals defense, which,
yeah.
I didn't think to against the Texans because they're so hot, but whatever. The Saints suck, which I guess I should have known way beforehand, but
Yeah,
one just off of my defense. But it's just one of
yeah, and
the punch and you gotta keep rolling.
yeah, yeah, and you just got to take it, and hopefully next week you can bounce back. And that's fantasy football for you,
Yeah.
really.
So my takeaway from last week is
So,
sometimes it sucks, but you just gotta keep rolling. So I
all
got the
right,
horses.
so that was week 10.
Yes.
We're now into week 11. There's no significant news other
Other
than
than Ken Dorsey. Yeah.
the
So maybe
OC
Bills figure
of the
it out
Bills
fantasy wise.
says that, yeah, hopefully they figure it out and they get everybody running. I know Gabe Davis has kind of been struggling a lot. On a lot of people were very
Yeah,
hopeful
well, a lot of people are
for
mad about
him,
Diggs in
and
this
Diggs
last
too. Yeah,
performance against the Broncos, which granted they've
that
been
was
unreal since the Dolphins game, but
yeah. Yeah, they've gotten their act together and have
they've
looked
only allowed
like,
15
a
points.
solid defense.
They've
Yeah,
only allowed 15 points since
yeah,
and as an average per game since playing the Dolphins, and that's 70 point schmeat
yeah,
down.
yeah. That's crazy. Honestly, like that's a pretty solid
They've been on fire,
defense.
man. Russ
So
is definitely a trade for a guy in
yeah.
fantasy, and I'm glad to have him behind Jared Goff now. So if
Mhm.
we want to talk about trade news, I finally got Jared Goff, and they
Well, see,
almost
I was gonna say we can kind of segue that into our or Josh's big question. Yes, Josh is contributing even though he's not on the podcast.
yeah, kind of.
Um,
His dream lineup
but
was
Josh, his dream lineup was a sham.
it was a
No,
tragedy, and he
it was
talked about
awful.
Ryan being a little,
No,
what.
we're just joking. We're just joking, Josh. It was decent. You just messed up one thing. But Josh's big question was kind of including Russ. Um, Rank these long-term QBs for a dynasty format. Um, the first one he's got is Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, and Russ. So out of those six, who would you rank first? I know what my first is.
I think it's got to be Mahomes.
Mahomes is the top dog
Yeah,
for sure.
I
Um,
think I think Joey Shiesty is after that.
I would put Burrow, Herbert, and Allen kind of all on the same level. It could be, 2A, 2B, and 2C for me
Yeah, but
because
I would
all of
definitely
them
have
are
it
kind of,
Burrow, Herbert, and Allen
yeah.
too,
I think Burrow edges out the other two, but
slightly.
Allen, yeah, but Allen and Herbert, they've got the team around them, and I think that they are long-term quarterbacks and will be fantasy assets in
Yeah,
the long term.
and then I think I have
So,
Lamar right after that, only
yeah.
because injuries and his wide receivers are so inconsistent.
Hmm.
But it's still a bit better than Russ, who's about
Yeah.
to be like in the final years of his
Mm.
life as a
I
QB.
mean, let's face it. He's on the back nine. He is preparing for retirement. Lamar's still got quite a bit of football left
Yeah,
in
he's
him.
still got a lot of gas in the
So,
tank.
yeah, I don't think Russ has that much. I think he's almost done with football. So, I think
Two or
maybe
three
give
more
him
years.
give him two, yeah, give him 2 years
But he's a great
and he'll
super
be
flex
out.
option. And
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
hurting, he will stabilize you for,
Yep.
I'd say the next 2 years at least.
Yep.
So if trade deadline's coming
So,
up, you can throw a
yeah,
third out, probably land Russ, maybe a second.
I wouldn't go second for Russ
Oh yeah,
unless
I'd
it's a
want what
super
I paid for
flex
Russ, which
league.
is a third.
Yeah,
So
I wouldn't do that for unless it's like a super flex league where you can have two QBs. So, E, why don't you go with your big question?
yeah, I mean mine is kind of a simple one and it's kind of piggybacking off of last episode, but CJ Stroud for MVP.
I think there's a chance. Yeah, he's kind of been vaulted into the MVP
I mean, dude's only thrown what,
question
two interceptions,
because
two
it's
interceptions and
it's
two fumbles.
impressive.
Like
It's impressive
he's just
what
slinging
he's
it. He
done.
just beat Joe Burrow when they were on a
Yeah,
win streak. It was the Bengals of last year that were 3-5. Oh, they can't do anything and then catch fire, and he shut them down and
yeah,
killed their playoff hopes, pretty much.
yeah, for real. And that's honestly, it's crazy what he's done as a rookie. Like he just to be in the conversation of MVP as a rookie, that's nuts.
Oh, it's
Like you're
impressive.
going up against so many like veteran quarterbacks and even some running backs and wide receivers are even considered, but I mean rarely.
Yeah, because it's like
But
what CMC,
it's
Tyreek
just
Hill,
crazy.
Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar, and like CJ are like
I'd
I'd say
say Lamar, yeah, I'd say Lamar is like at the top of that list. He's having a great year so
yeah,
far. But Stroud is nipping at his heels. If he continues
he's
like
gonna be
I'd say if he
rookie
continues like
offensive,
this,
sure.
oh, he's gonna be rookie yeah, offensive player of the year for sure. He unless he gets hurt, he is going to be offensive player of the year for the rookies.
Or at
So
least rookie of the year, offensive player of the year. It might go to Tank.
offensive player of the year.
If Tank keeps playing this way,
Yeah.
Stroud might get rookie of the year, and Tank might get rookie offensive player of the year because they
Yeah.
won't give him
That
both.
could. Yeah, that's true. And to be honest, I Stroud, I am so glad I picked him up in one of the weeks.
Yeah.
Like he's such a fantasy asset. I just plugged him into my team, and I'm hoping I can ride him into the championship.
Yeah, because
So
they have, let's see here this week. Um, if you want to talk about your question, I'll pull up who he
yeah,
played this week.
okay. So
Oh,
my
it's Arizona.
question.
Arizona. And that defense is still
Oh, it's
terrible.
Arizona.
Yeah. And
Oh,
that defense
yeah,
is still
he could. he could shred him.
Atlanta just choked
That's an
hard, but
interesting matchup.
it's what Atlanta
Yeah,
does. So
yeah. Um, okay, so my big question, and it kind of comes off of the beginning of the episode, where we're nearing the end of the season, of the fantasy season, and the trade deadline before the playoffs is approaching. Some people have it at week 13. Some people have it at week 14, the last week of the regular season. And looking towards the off season, if you're not contending, who do you sell high on before the trade deadline to get potentially picks next year, or developmental players for this upcoming year, maybe players that look hopeful? But who do you sell
yeah,
at their high point near the end of this season?
I
I've
mean, I
got
think
some.
yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
just to name a few, before you go, I think Austin Eckler's one. That if
Okay.
you're not going to the playoffs, like he was kind of that way last year, and I sold him. I think his value's a little bit lower now, but I think you can
Yeah.
still get a first round pick for Eckler going into the playoffs because he has a good schedule
Yeah.
against the Bills, who allow a ton of points to running backs.
Yeah.
Denver, who has allowed a lot to running backs. I mean, um, James Cook last night didn't give up the most, but it's also he hasn't been good all year. To everybody
Yeah.
else, Denver's given up a lot to running backs, and then he has the Raiders. So that's a great fantasy playoff schedule. I think Lamar, if you're not going to be in the playoffs, that's another guy I would want. I mean, San Fran for second round of the playoffs isn't great, but I think it's still worth adding. I think if you're not going to the playoffs, another guy I would sell would be Barkley. Barkley or Ken Walker, I think would be great ads if you're.
I wouldn't sell Ken Walker. I wouldn't sell Ken Walker.
I think
Just
if
because
I'm trying,
he's young, he's still got his wheels on. I mean,
yeah,
he's a fantasy asset.
he is definitely an asset. I mean, round one he is Philly of the playoffs, so unless you're selling him to the like first seed, who's not going to need him
Yeah.
round one. But he has Tennessee and Pitt after that, which is a good schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on the situation you're in. Like, if you are trying to reboot and you can sell Ken Walker for 2 firsts, I would take that for Ken Walker if I need
Yeah.
help. And this next class coming up for this year, I mean, QB is pretty nice. Wide
It's deep.
receivers,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
not, yeah, it's not as deep, but wide receivers, there's some good ones. There's a couple of good running backs in this class. Like
No, it's
this
deep at
draft
quarterback. I know
is every,
there's a couple running backs that you can look at,
yeah.
but
I mean, Cody
the
Schrader,
quarterback class
I
is
was
very.
just at the Mizzou game. Cody Schrader
Yeah.
is freaking stud, dude.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
so is Blake Corum too. I think
yeah, Blake
that
Corum.
guy's going to be a beast this upcoming year, no matter who he goes to. So, um, okay. So I've got a couple. Now I'm my intent with this was like kind of looking at older players, like maybe players that are on the back nine of their career, that are on the verge of being replaced. Um, Players like Derrick Henry, um, I'd say Thielen would be one of them. Sell while he's still got a couple more games to play as the wide receiver one, maybe to a playoff contender that needs a flex fill that it's almost guaranteed points. I'd sell Thielen or Derrick Henry to them for a guaranteed pick next year. Um, Maybe even James Conner. Conner is definitely in the mix for being replaced
Well, yeah, I think
within the next 2 years.
With Kyler, I mean, just speaking of gaining that asset, with Kyler coming back, James Conner, you're going to see more out of.
Yeah, yeah. And the last one, kind of iffy, but we've been speculating this for the last like 3 years. But Kelsey, and
Yeah,
who
that's
knows
what I
how
told
many years he has.
last week. Is
Yeah,
I think this is the year to sell Kelsey.
yeah. So how depends on how many, years he has left. He might only have one. This might be the end of his tenure. So you you could sell him for a high price to somebody who may not believe that those question marks are there and that he's just invincible. He's
Yeah,
the Frank Gore of the tight end world, where he's the ageless one.
he might be.
So
Ageless
he
wonder.
might be, but who knows? I That's just my thoughts on it. I think Kelsey is a major sell right now, but that's also again that's been speculated for the last like 3 years whether or not he would actually retire or if he keeps coming back and whatnot. So
Yeah,
who knows?
I agree.
Um,
I think this is the time to sell.
yeah. So okay, with all of our big questions out of the way now, we're gonna go into our dream lineups for the week. We'll start off with Josh. Josh's QB is Justin Herbert
Herb
versus Green
Howard.
Bay. I think that's a pretty good matchup. Green Bay has been struggling a lot, especially the last couple of weeks. So I I think Herbert's gonna tear him apart.
Yeah,
So
I mean they caught just a bad break against the Lions. I mean, honestly, that in that game they just ran out of time. Is what happened. I've had a couple of those games where it's like we didn't lose, we just ran out of time, and they
yeah,
suck. But like he's got a good shot against Green Bay. I think they need
yeah,
to start stacking wins. I think this is like the moment for their coach. You know, we saw the Bills just had to change. This is kind of the same thing for them.
yeah. I think so too. So it's a good pick, Josh.
Yeah.
Um, Ethan, what is your QB?
I got Hurts up
Ooh,
against Kansas
Hurts
City.
versus Kansas City. All
Yeah, I
right.
just I just
All
think it's
right.
gonna be a good game, man. Um,
You think
AJ
he's going to get
Brown's
a lot of running work, like a lot of groundwork for him?
I don't think there'll be a ton. Kansas City's pretty good about containing QBs,
Yeah.
but I mean, there's always the brotherly shove on the 1 yard line. Because they're definitely not going to give it to Swift against Kansas City's D line on the one. Like that is going to be
Yeah.
100% brotherly shove.
Yeah.
I mean, AJ Brown's just been on a tear. Like Hurts every week has just been solid. So I'm just going to keep believing in that.
Yeah.
I think it's
Well,
pretty much
yeah, and consistency is key when it comes
yeah.
to like fantasy football. I preach this over and over again. I'd rather have a player that gets 15 to 25 points consistently or
Yeah, then
around 20 points consistently than have somebody who gets 5 points one week and 40 points the next week because it
yeah, because
just
like that's where
yeah,
Ashley's
that's a
team
sweet
is.
spot.
Josh's wife, like
Hmm.
her players are either going to go off or they're not even going to show up. And
Yeah,
like I think she's the person that if she sneaks into the playoffs, she's the kind of team that's going to get first rounded or
she's a
second
dark
rounded
horse.
because one of those weeks her team isn't going to show up.
Yeah,
You know,
and
whether she makes
that's
it
the
in or not.
key. Yeah, and that's the key to making it deep into the playoffs is not having what I would call a glitchy team
Yeah.
where it's like half your team doesn't show up, but the other half does, and it doesn't even out.
Yeah,
So
that's why I'm happy with where my team is at right now. Like I was having a glitch problem at the start of the season.
mhm,
Now I think my team has kind of settled into like I know what I'm going to get from them.
yeah,
And like even against Ashley, like she caught a fluke dub. Like I'm going to call it what it is. She caught a fluke win against me that will not
yeah.
happen in 10 more matchups that we play against each other. I could play her the rest of the season and I would beat her every single time. Just being real
But Ethan,
honest. Yeah,
but
being
but
very no, it's the truth.
but
It's the
but
truth. There is no but. If I played her for the rest of the
she
season, I would beat
won.
her every time. She did. She did. And that is what we call a fluke. You know,
But she won, Ethan.
she won
Come
the
on.
1 out of 10 times that we'll play.
But
So
she won. So
He did.
that's all I got to say on that.
Congratulations to her for her fluke sham win, and that's okay. It happens. It's fantasy football.
Sham. Oh my gosh.
It was
All
it was
right.
it was an affront to fantasy to lose by that little because of a kicker and a defense. It's not my fault the Seahawks suck, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't do that.
Well, I lost. I lost because of collusion. So
Yeah. Yep.
literally.
Speaking
Okay.
of Cleveland, your QB.
Yes, collusion. Mahomes
It has nothing to
versus
do with collusion.
Philly.
Mahomes versus
I
Philly.
know, but it makes for a good segue. So,
I think it's gonna be a shootout.
Mahomes
I
versus
really,
Philly. I think it
really
is.
do.
Yeah, and I hope oh, that AJ Brown is on the receiving end of that. Like he
Yes,
just gets like
a
four
thousand
four
percent.
or five touchdowns. I
Whoa.
want it. I want all of the
He's
touchdowns.
not gonna have a DK. He's not gonna have a Metcalf, like a 3 or 4
Who
touchdown
knows?
game out of
All
nowhere.
right. I want that. I want it because I want to win this
I
weekend.
hope he gets it for you, buddy. But
All right. So, yeah, I have Mahomes versus Philly. I think, like Ethan said, it's gonna be a shootout. It's gonna be a high scoring game. It's either going to be a high scoring game with a lot of points, or nobody is scoring, and it's a battle of who has the best kicker. And that's essentially like what it's going to end up. It's either one side or the other. I'm guessing because you have Hurts, you're betting on the shootout. So,
yeah,
um, but I really do think no matter how much or how big these defenses are, because both of them have very good defenses, I think it's going to end up being a shootout. But it's an opinion. I'm wrong sometimes, but um, let's go ahead and move on to running back. Josh has Jahmyr Gibbs
Amir
versus
Gibbs.
Chicago
So
as
here's
his RB1.
yes. So here's the thing about Gibbs. I think he's gonna keep out touching Monty.
Mhm,
Dan Campbell has already said he said it last week going into the game. Gibbs is gonna out touch Monty.
mhm.
I think with what he did last week, he's gonna out touch Monty again. Um, I think he's going to be the goal line back from now on too, because last week you saw Monty, he got 2 attempts in the red zone. On one of his red zone attempts, he got two
Yep.
tries to get into the end zone and couldn't get in there.
And not just two tries within the five,
Yeah, it
like
was like
within five
one off of
yards,
the
and he could not get it.
like one off of the three, and he couldn't
Yeah,
get in. So I think it's going to keep being Gibbs in the red zone. I also think with how bad Chicago's defense is, he's a home run threat.
yeah,
And like last week in the passing game, it was literally run to Jahmyr, run to Monty, or throw to Sun God against the Chargers.
yeah.
And like that was Detroit's entire offense. So I think it'll be different against Chicago. I think he's still garnering the passing work over Monty as well. So he's going to outpace him. I think he's going to get the goal line work. He's going to get the receiving work if Jared Goff will
Yeah.
check it. I was sitting there watching the game like, my God, Jared, you're throwing it out of bounds. And like Gibbs is he's just chilling. He's just chilling. Nobody there. Like, just check it down. God, I wish I could slap Jared Goff sometimes, but it's okay because he's an amazing quarterback. But he's good. He's good.
Yeah. I think that's a good pick. I really do. It's
Oh, yeah.
just it's just him splitting touches with Monty that
Yeah,
just
it's the
worries
cuff
me a
that we
little
don't
bit.
love. Yeah.
It's the cuff, the handcuff. I just don't like that they're almost splitting it 50-50. It's nearly 50-50. I think it was like 12-13 or
I
something in the
tell you,
split.
so Gibbs had 14.
14. Okay.
Monty had 12.
Yeah. So it was only a split of two. So I'm just I'm unless that
But
split
as far as
gets
targets go,
further apart.
Monty had 0, Gibbs had
Yeah.
5.
Okay. So that's
That's
positive
a
that he's
big
getting the
deal.
receiving work. Because I think Monty is just now being used as just a
He's
relief
their
back.
he's their and
So
short
like
back. That's what he
Yeah,
is.
yeah. But I'm glad that Gibbs is getting the work now. We have been
Well, the
praying
fans
for
have been
this.
calling for it. Fantasy
Yeah,
have been
we have
calling
been
for it. And
we have been praying for this for weeks now.
he's been
So
the better
I'm
back the entire time. They just have
yeah,
not
and I'm so glad that they're finally utilizing him.
same
Okay, so
RB1.
let's breeze through the rest of our RBs. Let's go on with Josh's RB2, and then we'll finish off with our RB1s and RB2s. Okay,
Brian.
he has James Conner
Oh, that's
in as his RB2. I think that's a good pick.
yeah, against Houston.
Especially like you said with Kyler in, he's going to get the work.
Yeah,
Um, so I have my RB1 is Eckler
yeah.
versus
Okay. That's
Tampa
another
Bay.
really good matchup.
I think he's going to get that. Tampa Bay defense is a little weak right
Or
now,
it's
a
Green
little
Bay.
bit.
Uh, CMC is against Tampa.
Oh, Green Bay. Oh God,
Yep,
sorry, Eckler versus Green Bay.
all good.
Dang, why did I mess that up?
You have it right in the table here too. You have Tampa Bay
Hmm.
in your
All
dream
right,
lineup.
I'll have to fix that. Um, so it is Green Bay,
Yep.
and I actually do agree
For
with that
Eckler, it
matchup
is
again.
Tampa Bay
Yeah,
for CMC.
CMC. Okay, I think I had CMC in there before I changed it.
Gotcha.
Okay, my notes are wrong.
It's okay.
Oh,
It happens
all
to
right.
best.
Oh, thank you for telling me I'm the best. All right, so Eckler versus Green Bay. I think he's going to get a lot of work. Um, I mean, as always in that offense, especially going up against Green Bay, it's not it's not a terrible matchup for him.
Their run defense
Um,
is terrible.
yeah. So my RB2 is
Brian,
Brian is B Robinson, and it's not Bijan.
but no mustard.
It is Brian Robinson,
He is playing the
and
worst.
he's yeah, exactly, and that's why I'm playing this solely off of matchup.
Well, he had a
I
big week
think he
last
can
week
do
too.
it, and he
And
had a huge week.
yeah,
I loved seeing him getting all that work. I mean, he was their leading receiver, I
yeah.
believe.
And
He was
second
their leading
was
receiver.
Gibson.
Yeah. So it's nice seeing him get that work pretty much because last year he didn't get a whole lot of receiving work on that team. He was mainly the punch it in and short yardage
Yeah,
back.
he was like Monty. He was
So
their inshore guy.
exactly. But it's nice to see him branching out and being used elsewhere. Um, all right, Ethan, why don't you do your RB1 and RB2?
Yes, sir. I have got ETN. I'm going back to him. Better matchup against Tennessee this time. Um, I mean, Tennessee's D line is good, but they've given up to running backs. The Falcons
Yeah.
didn't take advantage when they played them, but I think I still like the matchup. And then
Hmm.
my running back two is Aaron Jones against the Chargers, who just gave up almost 300 yards to the Lions. It kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah. And I like both of those picks. ETN kind of struggled this last week, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I think I think Lawrence was just in his head from the matchup against San Fran. Like, I think he just felt like they were always coming for him and there's nothing he could do. So he wasn't looking to check down to ETN. The play
yeah,
calling got called away from him because they're like, we got to throw to get in this. And then Lawrence was being chased by ghosts the entire times and making terrible
yeah.
decisions. It was just a
Well,
bad match.
I mean that that defense is scary, so I don't blame him.
He just
But
never got settled. And it was just a
yeah,
mental thing for him. But I don't think that's going to be the case with Tennessee. I think
yeah,
he's going to be reestablished. I think they're going to lean back on ETN because where they started getting back into the game against San Francisco is when they were using ETN.
yeah,
So when they're using their screen game to running backs and getting outside the tackles on pitch plays and then pushing it to Christian Kirk.
yeah. And
What was
it's
successful.
proven this year that when they lean on ETN,
They win.
they succeed and
That's
they
just
win.
yeah, that's what happens.
So, I think they're figuring out that that's the key. So, all
So I'll
right. So let's go. Yeah, go ahead with your wide receivers.
So I've got Tyreek as my wide receiver one against the Raiders. It is the new look Raiders, but I still like the matchup for Hill.
Yeah.
And then I
There's still questions about that uh, Las Vegas team.
yeah, we'll see over the next coming weeks. But I also have Ayuk against Tampa Bay, so San Francisco against Tampa Bay.
Okay, and I'm surprised. Actually, we'll go over it here in a sec. Okay, so you got Tyreek and Ayuk.
Yep.
I like the Ayuk pick. He's just he feels like he's up and down, and
Yeah,
I going off of matchup, this is good, but yeah,
we'll see.
he's
We'll
too
see.
unpredictable for me.
Yeah.
So I've got CD and Waddle as my
You're
two
chasing the
wide
big
receivers.
performance.
I am chasing the big performance by CD. Waddle, again, he's up and down, but I think I trust him enough against this Las Vegas defense to at least get some targets and be able to
He's due.
make some room. So, but yeah, those are my wide receivers. Let's do okay. So Josh has Tyreek
Yep.
as his wide receiver one, so he followed you in that.
Tankles, which we all have Tank.
And then we all have Tank. He's in my flex and your flex too,
But
but
he
he
is the
has
wide
Tank.
receiver one on that offense. He
He
is.
is. He has surpassed Nico Collins, which as a Nico Collins owner, I'm kind of bummed by that. But I think Tank Dell just has so
The
much
thing that
potential.
sucks is who CJ looks for in the red zone first is always Tank. That is what sucks in being a Nico owner. Because Nico will
Yeah.
still get yards, he'll still get targets, and then, we'll see what he can do with it. But in that red zone, CJ's looking to throw it to Tank.
And Stroud too.
Or
not Stroud.
Noah?
Oh my gosh.
Noah Brown?
No. Well, yeah, I was saying they're tight end.
Dalton Schultz?
Schultz. Why did I say Stroud? Yeah, Schultz.
It's Tank for red zone specifically.
Yeah.
Only talking red zone. It's Tank and Schultz are their dudes for the red zone, or Singletary. But it is in that order: Tank, Schultz, Singletary is the red zone guys. Noah, he's okay. I think he's gonna fall back to earth. I think he's very overhyped.
He's just had a series of very good games.
Yeah, he just caught the wave, I think, but I would not be paying big for Noah. Like if you can get him, maybe it can use. I don't think it's going to.
Yeah.
I think Tank is the guy and Nico's the second guy. So you're like, being on a wide receiver 3. But I mean, if CJ keeps having MVP performances, maybe. But
I've got Noah Brown is on waivers in one of my leagues, and I put in to pick him up.
I got him in our ESPN.
I just don't know.
But
I don't know if it's gonna end up being anything, but
maybe.
Yeah. So he's got Tyreek and Tank Dell. Going on to tight ends, both of y'all.
You're the only different one.
Yeah,
so
both of y'all have Travis Kelce. So
which is a good matchup against Philly.
It's a good matchup. I have Hawkinson versus Denver.
Chasing the big performance.
Well, no, because of the last 2 weeks of seeing Dobbs work with Hawkinson, I think
he's been his dude.
He goes to him a lot.
But I mean, 15 targets.
I know, and I love it. I want to see more of it because when Justin Jefferson gets back, obviously he's going to be absorbing those targets, but he's questionable whether or not he's going to actually come back this week. Now, since I have Hawkinson in, I'm kind of hoping he doesn't come back this week, but he might. So I'm kind of taking that risk. But I trust Hawkinson versus Denver, especially with Dobbs under center. But my flex is Tank Dell, or one flex is Tank Dell, and my last one is Devontae Smith.
Yes.
Versus Kansas City.
Mine is Jerome Ford. Taking Well, he's just been consistent. And I think what I've been struggling with these last 2 weeks that I've lost dream lineups is consistency. And Jerome Ford against Pitt is
Mhm.
just a solid match.
Yeah, I think that is.
And then Josh, I'll do his
Yep.
second.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, his
Okay.
last two.
His flexes are Zay Flowers against Cincy, which is an interesting matchup, and Debo against Tampa Bay. So he's taking the opposite of me.
Yeah.
I've got Ayuk, he's got Debo.
Yep. All
And that's
right.
your lineups.
That is Dream Lineups. Thank you all for tuning in and listening to this podcast. You can find us on pretty much every social media platform, Twitter, which is X, and Facebook, Instagram. You can find us all on there. Come listen to us and watch us on YouTube and
Or
anywhere that
Spotify.
you find your YouTube or Spotify, anywhere you find your podcasts, we're there. Thank you guys. You can find us at Last Place FP, and thanks for listening.
And never forget,
Oh God.
sometimes you're right. Sometimes you're right. And we'll see you next
And
time.
sometimes you're Ryan, even with Josh not being here. Oh my
Yep.
gosh. All right, y'all have a good night.